Okay, guys, it's time to place an order to buy euro at 121,663. So I'm placing an order to buy euro at 121,663. Just right here. Okay. Okay, as you can see, long position open at 121,663 on euro.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Yeah, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, along with Tim Stanovic in our Interactive Broker studio. We're going to get back to Dr. William Yates, founder and owner of Yates Enterprises, on the phone from Chicago, continuing talking about, we've got the vaccine, yet getting it out. Who wants it? Who is going to, willing to take it? And if we don't get enough people to take it, I'm worried will we never get to herd immunity and what that means.
Well, it means that more and more people will get sick.
Yeah, not
and
good.
Unfortunately die.
Not a good thing. All right, we're going to get back to him in just a moment. Thanks, Tim, for the uplifting.
It was a question I asked Dr. Gabe Kellen from Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health earlier today. That exact question, Carol.
All right, we're going to get back to this in just a moment. Charlie Pallett, take it away.
You got it. Glad you said it, because I was thinking it. Here's what's going on. Stocks lower, but do want to begin repeating an earlier headline that we brought you. The House will vote tomorrow on urging Vice President Mike Pence to back President Trump's removal. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all slumping on this first trading session of the new week. S&P down for the first time in 5 sessions as investors begin the week in a cautious mood. Equity prices trading near records. S&P being led lower by real estate and utilities. Right now, the S&P is down 24, a drop of about 0.7%. The Dow down 109, down 0.4%. NASDAQ down 145, a drop of 1.1%. 10-years down 430 seconds. 10-year yield 1.13%. Gold lower a little change, down 49 cents the ounce at $18.48. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.3%, holding at $52.09 a barrel. Pfizer and BioNTech have raised their COVID-19 vaccine production target for this year to 2 billion shots as the partners respond to a global rush of countries seeking to order more doses. Among some of the vaccine names, BioNTech shares, they are trading higher today, surging 7.1%. By the way, this stock this very young year is up by 31.9%. Pfizer, the partner, up 1.3%. Among some of the other names there, AstraZeneca down 0.7%. Moderna up today by 4.3%. Now, as for the process of actually getting inoculations into the arms of Americans, lots of moving parts and lots of questions about the slow pace of the rollout. Dr. Joshua Sharfstein is Vice Dean at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health.
We're having a lot of trouble getting vaccine to the people who need it right now in the United States. I think they've delivered about 6 million doses out of 22 million that are available. And it really sheds light on how important it is to get the basic, rollout right and get as many people who need the vaccine vaccinated, so we're not holding on to vaccine that could be being used to save lives.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Carnival posted an adjusted fourth quarter net loss of $1.9 billion, but the world's largest cruise operator also says demand is surging for 2022. Carnival shares down now by 2.3%. Recapping equities lower, S&P down 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right. Thank you so much, Charlie. I want to go back to our next guest, William Yates, Dr. William Yates. He's the founder and owner of Yates Enterprises, and he joins us right now on the phone from Chicago. Dr. Yates, I know your group at Yates Enterprises, at Yates Protect, works a lot with thermometers and thermal imaging and thermal scanning. One thing that we've learned, though, throughout the pandemic has been that having a higher than usual temperature isn't necessarily the only indicator that you could potentially be carrying COVID. What have we learned?
Well, I guess what we have learned, the converse to that, is that having a higher than normal temperature puts you in the realm possibly of having COVID. We know that 40% of the people who have COVID and are infective, 40% won't have any symptoms at all. But what we do know, the people who are symptomatic, almost 80% of those people will have a temperature as defined by the CDC above 100.4 Fahrenheit. It's almost consistent. If you look at every study and type in symptomatic COVID, you will find fever is number one, up to some studies show as low as 80, some show as high as 96. So I think it is worthwhile, and I think it's going to be standard of care in the world, because what it's proved to us, having a fever every day is not normal. You can't fake a fever. To get a fever, your hypothalamus in your brain has to be activated. And even if you don't have COVID, you shouldn't be at work with the fever.
Right.
That's the main thing we've learned.
What happens to this technology if, somebody walks in from outside and they've been in below freezing temperatures for 10 minutes walking from their home to work or on their commute, and they walk in and they get scanned and the surface of their skin is colder than usual?
That's a good question. So that we get asked that all the time, and so we ask people to have a separate area for kind of a equilibrium process where not a lot of people are. All it'll take is from about 10 minutes for that person to return to what we call an equilibrium state, and then we check them. But on some of the machines, we can raise the threshold and get what temperature they were at, and it'll make the calculation for us. But it takes, some doing. So to make it easy, we have them have a place where the person can stay for about 10 minutes, and then we check them.
So a lot of the temperature scanners that companies have, are they kind of a joke?
Well, I'm in the business. I'm going to say mine aren't a joke. But,
well, okay. No, that's fine. But you know what I'm saying.
I get you. I'm going to answer it. I think a lot are a joke because a lot of people use them incorrectly. And when I go into restaurants or different places, they kind of go through the motions and they never look at the number. I know that for a fact because I just walk in and I just give them any part of my body, and if I give them my knee, they'll scan my knee. So you have to be very diligent about where you scan because those are measuring body surface temperature, not body core temperature.
Right.
And you should do it. The best place to do it is the forehead or on the side of the forehead where something called the temporal artery is beating under there. Those are the best places. The wrist, everybody's hand is the coldest thing on their body. That's why we wear gloves. So when you start shooting at the wrist, and everybody's going to pass. So I hope that answers the question, but the technology is good, but it's only as good as the operator.
I think that we get shot in our forehead, don't we?
Oh, we get full body, I think.
We get full body. Hey, Dr. Yates, just got about 30, 40 seconds here. I don't know. So in terms of getting back to normal, how do you see it? Just quickly.
As quick as I can say it, about 2 years. It's going to take that long, probably, with the vaccine and to get herd immunity. And then by then, there's going to be some other pathogens that we need to worry about. So it'll never look the same, but it'll be closer.
Come on.
I mean, you've heard about the one in South Africa. We didn't even talk about that. We talked about the one in the UK. There's another variant in South Africa that's a little sticky as far as, being able to, fall into being killed by the vaccine.
Happy Monday, everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say Happy New Year, Dr. Yates.
All right, Dr. Yates, thank you so much. Stay safe, be well. Dr. William Yates, founder and owner of Yates Enterprises, on the phone from Chicago. Well, that's the new reality, though. We've got to be aware that there's going to be, that's why there's virus hunters out there.
Yeah, I think we have to just adjust our expectations. That's the key to not getting too disappointed.
I think so, too. Yeah, I'm all about that. Get used to doing that. Let's get back to world of national news. Back over to Nancy Lyons. She is in our D.C. studio. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Carol. Republicans are blocking a Democratic resolution urging Vice President Mike Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment, aimed at removing President Trump from office before his term ends next week. One Republican objected to a unanimous consent request from Democrats, which shelves the issue for today. District of Columbia Mayor Muriel Bowser says she has asked President Trump to approve a pre-emergency disaster declaration for the city ahead of Inauguration Day. The mayor says the declaration would allow for more federal assistance to prevent a repeat of last week's attack on the U.S. Capitol. To that end, the mayor says she also has requested all public gathering permits be canceled through the 24th.
Our goals right now are to encourage Americans to participate virtually and to protect the District of Columbia from a repeat of the violent insurrection experienced at the Capitol and its grounds on January the 6th.
The National Park Service says it's closing the Washington Monument and other park sites temporarily due to credible threats. A growing number of Wall Street banks and businesses have cut off ties with President Trump's campaign and financial arms, as well as the broader Republican Party following last week's insurrection at the Capitol. The financial technology company Stripe has reportedly cut off the Trump campaign from its payment processing services. The move would cut off Trump's fundraising arm from what has been a steady stream of small dollar donations. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Nancy Lyons with World of News. Update there. Let's give you an update on Bitcoin because it was not a good weekend, Tim.
No, it was not a good weekend. Bitcoin right now is at $31,859. The decline that we've seen today, it's down 16% right now.
Right.
The decline that we've seen today is the lowest price that Bitcoin has been at since last week. And
it was at $40,000.
Exactly. That's
Friday,
what I was gonna
Saturday,
say. Yeah.
right?
So is volatility for Bitcoin back? I mean, I say back because something that Mike McClone likes to point out on our show is that if you look at it over the last year, it's not any more volatile than the S&P 500.
On a percentage basis?
On a percentage basis.
When did we have a 16% drop in one day?
Well, this was in 2020.
Okay.
Not 2021.
16%.
Yeah.
Just going to say.
Yeah. Well, we had a 27%.
I love you,
drop
Mike,
of
but
the,
okay.
We had a 27% drop in the
That's true.
Bitcoin back on March 12th. And if you think back to when that was when everybody was very scared at the early signs of the pandemic.
Right.
There was a sell-off there too.
Right, because nervousness over it, and then it just took off like a rocket.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is the volatility, the swings. I think Bitcoin has just got so much mystery still around it that you've got increasingly regulators trying to figure it out and understand kind of how do we regulate it? Do we need to? What it means? So the UK's financial watchdog has a stark warning, though, for consumers looking to profit from the latest crypto boom. Be ready to lose everything. Zippo.
Is that just a warning? Like,
yeah, I know. It's like, well, we told you.
Yeah.
It's
to like new investors, right?
Told you not to pet the dog. He might bite you.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, though. I mean, people see the headlines, but I will tell you what, Carol, it feels a lot different than 2017 when
I think it does too.
We walked into a bar and the bartender's like telling you about Bitcoin.
Correct. And we were talking a lot more about blockchain. I felt like blockchain was going to be the one thing that everybody was really going to be interested in.
To be fair, I'm not walking into any bars right now, so
you better not. Otherwise, get out of my studio.
Yeah, don't worry.
All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ are all declining, down for the first time in 5 sessions as investors begin the week in a cautious mood. Equity prices, though, holding close to records. Energy companies among the biggest gainers in the S&P, but we are being led lower now by real estate and communication services. S&P down 22, a drop now of 0.6%. The Dow down 89, a drop of 0.3%. NASDAQ down 136, a drop of 1%. 10-year down 430 seconds, 10-year yield 1.12%. Gold, little change, down 44 cents the ounce at 18.48. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.3%, 52.07 a barrel on WTI. Twitter shares down by just about 6% after the social media platform permanently banned President Trump after a mob last week invaded the Capitol building. Recapping, stocks lower. S&P down 21, down now by 0.6. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, really appreciate that update. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stanovic in our Interactive Brokers studio. It's a new day and yet an old reminder of how powerful big tech is. As social media giants, Facebook, Twitter, Google, all ban President Trump and others in an effort to prevent further riot organizing. One already fighting back. This is already one of our big stories of 2021. Let's get into it. Reporting for Business Week, Bloomberg News technology reporter and author of No Filter, the inside story of Instagram, Sarah Fryer, with us on the phone in San Francisco, along with Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber on the Access line in Brooklyn. You know, big tech, we knew coming into 2021 it was going to be a story that was on our radar, but I don't know that we thought it was going to be on our radar, Joel, in this way.
I was looking forward to 2021 that didn't look anything like 2020, but I don't think I'll be so lucky.
No.
And obviously, last week's chaos actually came to a head even again over the weekend with sort of the social media platforms basically, you know, not only blocking Trump and perhaps permanently banning him in the case of Twitter, but then I think the Parler conversation has become the one that's even more interesting because both the Apple App Store and Google's Play Store have taken restrictions there. But then I thought the big move, and the one that I was actually most eager to talk to Sarah about, was sort of the Amazon move, AWS coming in and basically blocking it.
I didn't see Sarah, that coming.
I mean, this, but it does show, you know, like not only are the social media companies able to wield a stick, but like Amazon's got the biggest stick of all. So Sarah, kind of, this is just a fast-moving story, but I want to understand like how you're thinking about where this conversation goes from here.
Well, it dovetails right in with the tech power conversation that we're going to have a lot more this year as these antitrust battles with Washington rage on, and I expect that to continue during the Biden administration. And that tech power conversation is both about, you know, the power to restrict as much as it is about the power to allow. And so the companies are grappling with this, allowing Parler to be on the App Store, allowing Parler to have hosting by Amazon. That's something that employees are looking at, critics are looking at and saying, well, why don't you just cut them off? You have the power to do that. You're a private company. And the companies are saying, you know what? Yeah, we don't want to be dealing with this. We don't want this headache. And it's really interesting to see that evolution because we've talked about it a lot, like you said, with the social media companies. A lot of conservatives are concerned about too much cutting off of people who have accounts. A lot of people on the Democratic side are concerned about the hosting of illegal activity and people who are inciting violence. And the balance is really what is an issue here.
So, Sarah, a lot, and you mentioned this, but a lot of the heat on the companies actually came from their own employees. So what have we seen in not only from AWS, but at Facebook and Apple? What sort of internal factions are the companies navigating?
Well, Silicon Valley companies have a reputation for being really mission-driven, and I think a lot of employees have had a personal reckoning over the last few years. Is it ethical to work for Facebook? Is it ethical to work for Google if they're working with the Defense Department on, putting people in cages at the border. There have been a lot of new debates about what it means if you work for a company that has certain suppliers, certain vendors, certain contracts, and hosts certain voices. And so we have seen employees be almost the more forceful voice against their leaders than even the government, because the government can't really be clear about what they want. Everyone's scrutinizing tech power, but they don't necessarily have a clear direction of what would be a good resolution. Whereas employees, they're mostly liberal, they're well educated, and they're saying, hey, I don't want to work for a place that supports something like this. And we saw an open letter from Twitter employees to Jack Dorsey asking for a bigger ban on Trump. They had previously only banned him for 12 hours, and now that he's permanently banned. And we've seen Amazon employees write to their employer about Parler. It's saying, why are we hosting Parler? We should take them off. And I think that power should not be underestimated because of how hard it is to recruit in Silicon Valley the best talent.
Well, and what's to stop, I don't know, I don't know whether there's oranges to oranges, apples to apples, but another company from saying, I guess companies do that, right? If they don't want to work with a supplier or if they don't want to work with something, they have that opportunity to do it, Sarah. I'm just trying to understand the differences or not differences from another company kind of banning something, whether they don't sell to a certain customer. They do that all the time, right?
Well, sometimes, a few years ago, companies were happy to just work within the bounds of the law. There are sanctions against Iran. We won't sell to Iran. That was like, if it's illegal, we won't do it. And that was how Facebook and Twitter thought about content a lot in the early days. Remove as little as possible. Now, I think the tech companies are recognizing that they have this tremendous power and the ability to move more quickly than the government in many cases to fix it. They also have this great insight into what's happening faster than law enforcement officials have. Facebook, of course, is going to have to be providing law enforcement with a lot of the images of people who were in the violent mob last Wednesday. So I think that the companies are waking up to their power, but it's also a politically convenient time for them to do so because they're seeing that the power in Washington is shifting to the Democrats, and that party is a lot more in favor of tech companies taking responsibility for the power they have over public conversation.
So, Sarah, can we just talk about Parler specifically for a second here? Because where does a company like that go now? Like they've ultimately just had the power plug pulled out on them. Already, probably we're going to face some ire from Democrats. I thought, back to Carol's question there for a second. One interesting thing here was it wasn't like an arbitrary decision that any of these tech companies used to enforce this. They actually said, well, we have a code effectively, and Parler's in defiance of that code, and therefore that's what gives us cover to basically make this decision. So where does a company like Parler go from here?
And Sarah, just got about 40 seconds, just quickly.
Well, Parler is using this as a marketing opportunity, just like Gab when they were banned. They said they don't want to hear us, but we're still here. We're still going to survive. I think Parler is going to have to find an audience a different way. It's definitely going to be so difficult for them to survive and grow without access to the app stores. That makes it a lot less mainstream. You have to actually know how to get there another way.
Let's see, looking into my crystal ball, and yes, we will be talking about this a lot this year, no doubt about it. Sarah and Joel, you guys are the best. Sarah Fryer, technology reporter at Bloomberg News. Check out our book, No Filter. Joel Weber, editor at Business Week. For those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Business Week, we're going to continue. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business, that's next.
Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Monday, January 11th. Stocks are slipping. Wall Street takes a breather. Stocks down for the first time in 5 sessions as investors begin the week in a cautious mood. S&P being led lower by real estate and communication services. Eli Lilly lifting healthcare shares. Lilly is up by 11%. Right now, the S&P is down 17, a drop of 0.5%. The Dow down 42, a drop of 0.1%. Nasdaq is down 125 points, lower by 1%. 10-year down 5/30 seconds, 10-year yield 1.13%. Gold is down 0.1%, 18.47 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.3%, 52.09 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate crude. Now, what about the Federal Reserve? Jennifer Lee is a senior economist at BMO Nesbitt Burns. She was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
No one should be expecting them to tighten anytime too quickly, or they're not going to pull the punch bowl away too quickly. I think this is going to keep, because of all this, they're going to keep interest rates low for longer, and we're not going to see any major changes in interest rates, at least for the next couple of years.
Carnival posted an adjusted fourth quarter net loss of $1.9 billion, but the world's largest cruise operator also said demand is surging for 2022. The deficit exceeded the $1.57 billion loss projected by analysts and comes as most cruise operations around the world remain suspended because of COVID-19. Carnival, meanwhile, is prepared to restart cruises to Cuba when Joe Biden becomes president, potentially reviving voyages launched under the Obama administration and then stopped after a change to the rules in 2019. Carnival down 1.9% right now. We've got Royal Caribbean lower by 1.3%, Norwegian down by 1.3%. Staples is offered to buy the parent of Office Depot in a deal valuing the company $1 billion. Office Depot up today by 17.4%. Again, recapping, S&P down 17, a drop of 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Business Week brought to you by SEI. Since its founding 50 years ago, SEI has provided investment managers and asset owners with robust infrastructure platforms and flexible outsourcing solutions. Check it out. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. So let's get to our next segment because it's about the founding father of the People's Republic of China, controversial for his policies, disastrous, really. The Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution back in the late 1950s and 1960s. We are talking about Chairman Mao, and the reason we're talking about him is because his reign and his methods are not dissimilar to President Trump. It's provocative, it's thoughtful, it's the exact conversation we need to be having right now. The reason we're talking about it is because Bloomberg New Economy editorial director Andy Brown brought it to our attention. It's in his latest column. Andy is on the phone in New Hampshire. Hey, Andy, nice to have you here. Haven't had a chance to talk with you. It's been such a crazy week. How do you kind of think about this last week and President Trump as a leader?
Well, the way I've been looking at it is through the eyes of Chinese officials and state media. And they're having a field day with this. It plays absolutely into their a dominant narrative, which is that the United States is in permanent decline. Starting with the 2008-2009 financial crisis, which the United States arguably never really fully recovered from. And now this meltdown, as they see it, of the American system of democracy, which of course is key to American prestige and power projections, particularly soft power projection, around the world. And they're looking at this and they're saying, our system has not only produced a far more serious and successful response to COVID-19, which now underpins our economic recovery, and the economy in China is pretty much operating normally now. But it's also delivered critically stability, and they're comparing and contrasting all this with, frankly, the chaos that we've witnessed in Washington, D.C.
This is all happening against the backdrop of a trade war with China, relations not in a very good place, I think it's fair to say, Andy. what is the environment that President-elect Biden inherits, the relationship that President-elect Biden inherits with China in 9 days, and what does this do to that?
Well, actually, one of the sort of what we've been seeing over the past couple of days is yet more evidence that the Trump administration is trying to box in the Biden administration on China. In other words, taking actions against China, including sanctions against Chinese companies, but also more seriously in the geopolitical space. For instance, just the other day, eliminating all barriers to state-to-state contacts between the United States and Taiwan. Taking a series of actions like this, which will make it very difficult, which the Biden administration will find very difficult to roll back, lest they should be accused in the early days after they've taken over of being soft on China. This is a very deliberate strategy of the Trump administration, and frankly, it places the relationship, in a very, very brittle and dangerous position.
So, Andy, I want to go back though to this comparison with Chairman Mao. I mean, how does it help us maybe understand Trump, or understand even more so, kind of what his mission maybe was from the get-go?
Yeah, look, I'm not saying, and of course it wouldn't be serious to suggest that Trump is Mao in any way.
Right, of course.
And yet, there are these incredibly disturbing and uncomfortable parallels. Mao hated elites. Mao adored chaos. Mao saw conspiracies everywhere. And then of course the parallel with the events last week is that Mao himself, when he went, he went mad during the last years of his life. He launched an all-out attack on the Chinese government, the party and the state that he himself had created after the revolution, and he ordered his Red Guard followers to, as he put it, or as the People's Daily put it in a famous headline, bombard their headquarters. And he sowed chaos in China. And of course, this lasted for a decade. This was the Chinese Cultural Revolution. And one can see haunting echoes of that in some of the behaviors and personal attributes of Donald Trump.
So I guess the question is, if we're looking at this being a historical parallel, what can be done right now? What can the checks do, the checks and balances, that is, do in order to prevent that from happening here in the United States over the next few years?
Well, the optimistic, the optimist will say that the strength of democracy is its ability to self-correct. And you are seeing that right now in the events that are taking place, as we speak, the effort to hold Trump accountable. The election has been confirmed. Joe Biden will take office. And yet it has to be said that, the rest of the world aren't just going to look at this as being, the pre-Biden and post-Biden eras, as though there's a clear dividing line between the two. Yeah. The fact is that 74 million Americans voted for Trump. What was the number? 130 or 140 Republican
in the House.
Congressmen voted
147.
Yeah,
147 voted for this legislation. It's going to take years for America to rebuild trust and credibility around the world, including most critically with allies.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, all the healing and fixing up and repairing that will have to be done. Hey, Andy, thank you so much. Bloomberg New Economy Editorial Director Andy Brown joining us on his latest column. And in our next segment, speaking of President Trump, we're going to talk about how he will be spending his last few days. And from what we understand, he's not being mellow.
He's not tweeting
or not expected
either.
to be. He's not tweeting. No, he's not. We know that. All right, we'll get to that in a sec. Let's get to world and national news and back over to Nancy Lyons in D.C. Hi, Nancy.
Hey, Carol. The FBI is warning armed protests are expected to not only return to Washington next week, but are also planned for all 50 state capitals. An internal FBI bulletin warns the nationwide protests may start later this week and extend through President-elect Joe Biden's January 20th inauguration. Well, Democrats are moving ahead with their efforts to remove President Trump from office before his term expires, with an impeachment resolution likely later this week.
Democratic leader Steny Hoyer introduced a written resolution
and asked for its immediate consideration in the House.
As read out by the House clerk, it called on Vice President Pence to convene a cabinet meeting under the Constitution's 25th Amendment.
To declare President Donald J. Trump incapable of executing the duties of his office and to immediately exercise powers as acting president.
For quick passage, it required unanimous agreement, but as expected, a Republican came to the microphone.
I object.
The House then adjourned until tomorrow, when it will record a vote on this resolution and bring up the next steps. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
While Americans wait for the coronavirus vaccine and the U.S. death toll reaches 375,000, White House coronavirus response coordinator Dr. Deborah Birx says it's crucial for all of us to remain vigilant.
When you look at what's happening with cases, hospitalizations, and our fatality rates, we need to increase our diligence right now. Over these next 4 to 6 weeks will be very critical.
You can hear more with Dr. Birx on Bloomberg Sound On today at 5 p.m. Wall Street time. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take.
All right, Nancy, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Tim Stenovic. And Nancy touched on this. The National Park Service is shutting down national monuments in D.C. until after the inauguration. They're worried about protests and, I guess, problems arising again and, you know, what might happen at those monuments specifically.
Yeah, and according to an agency statement, the organization is worried about, quote, credible threats to visitors and park resources. The National Park Service will also temporarily close other facilities like parking areas and roads. I think, given what we saw, Carol, last week, this was a time where the most important people in our country, elected officials, were doing one of the most important things that they do, certifying an election. And that was not, obviously, a secure environment.
No, and going about, you know, the business of running our government, right? A very important branch elected by the people of the United States of America, doing their job, as you said, and they're safe to say their lives were at risk. I have to say there's a jarring photo. This has been really educational for me. Like after we did our broadcast live as everything was unfolding, and there were certain feeds we had access to, and I was following pictures and things on Twitter, but having to watch all of the footage and photos and things afterwards, you realize how many penetrated. You see people in like full body armor with, you know, plastic ties, which are used by law enforcement to handcuff people. Like you realize the mission, there was a mission there.
There was. By the way, the FBI found that guy yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's been detained. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no question that the U.S. government and different organizations, law enforcement organizations, were not ready for this. And I think the big question is
why?
Why? And what does that mean moving forward for President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration in just a few days?
Well, we know they've already put the fence up, right? We know it's going to be a very, very different. It was going to be anyway because of COVID, but it will be even more so.
Well, he's also told people not to come because of COVID.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be a very different, again, another different thing in this last year or so. This is Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Choppy session down Monday. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks trading in the red right now with technology names under pressure. Dow's currently down 86 points. S&P's dropped 25. NASDAQ is lower by 1.2%. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.13%. Gold is little changed, and transports are also little changed. Among the main 11 S&P sectors, leaders were energy and healthcare, while telecom and real estate led to the downside. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Walgreens and Merck. Apple and Coca-Cola were under pressure. And in other news, Bitcoin plunged 21%. Lucid Motors is said to be in talks to list via a Michael Klein SPAC. And Carnival CEO expects all ships operational by year end. Wrapping things up, Staples proposes to buy ODP for $40 a share in cash. And 40 North raised their WR Grace bid to $4.3 billion. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So 9 days away from the inauguration of President-elect Joe Biden at the nation's capital, and while we know the date is not in the current president's appointment book, as he does not plan to attend, or maybe it is in the book, but he's still not planning to attend.
Do not go to D.C. on this day.
No, exactly. Safe to say he is not expected to spend those final waning days in a quiet manner. So let's get into it with Bloomberg News White House correspondent Josh Wingrove. He is on the phone in D.C. Josh, peace, calm. I just can't wait. What are we expecting? What are you hearing from the White House right now? You know, I can only imagine that the president has got to be frustrated having lost his access to social media.
Yeah, and we're doing this whack-a-mole thing now where we keep chasing all these other sites that are going offline too, seeing if he's going to pop up on there. I mean, he doesn't just love social media; he loved Twitter in particular. This was his sort of true love, you know. It wasn't like he was juggling a few different platforms, really. I don't know. I don't think, for instance, we're going to see him like really take up something with zeal, in part because he's, of course, temporarily at least banned on Facebook and Instagram as well. So where does that leave him?
Right.
Well, kind of hold up. I mean, he didn't golf this weekend. He didn't tweet this weekend. Those words have never come out of my mouth in the previous 3 years, 11 months of his presidency. And, you know, he's going to Texas tomorrow to the border. So he's doing a little bit of a victory lap on building the wall and, you know, cracking down on migration. It will fuel, of course, reignite questions about child separation and all that. But this seems to be his attempt to change the channel as the impeachment proceedings march along.
Josh, there were reports earlier today that the president might make some sort of statement on big tech. He's likely, as you mentioned, very frustrated right now. What is the latest there?
We don't know yet if he's making a statement. He hasn't made one. What he's been doing lately is recording these videos, not bringing the press in, but just kind of recording them and dropping them online. Of course, it's difficult to do that right now when so many of his accounts are suspended. So, you know, we'll see what he's able to do.
Would he be able to? Would he be able to do? I mean, would he be able to send one out from the POTUS Twitter account if it was like an official video?
I guess it depends on what's in the video. I think they'd probably be able to get it sent out. Whether it would stay out is another matter. But yeah, we expect him one way or another to lean in to the fight. I think we risk overstating it a little bit. I mean, the White House press corps are there today. I mean, if he really feels strongly, he can just walk to the podium and say whatever he wants to say.
We'd all cover it. We'd all cover it.
Yeah, but he doesn't want to do that right now. I think he's he's been uncharacteristically avoiding the press for weeks.
Sounds like, too, he and his vice president are uncharacteristically avoiding each other as well. What do we know about that relationship? That one's kind of,
They've been BFFs, really, throughout the course of the, having lunch regularly. The reports right now out there indicate that the two of them have not spoken since Wednesday. And there's some reports that Trump didn't even call Pence at the Capitol. Pence, of course, was locked down at the Capitol like every other lawmaker when the mob descended on the building. So, I mean, that's just an unprecedented rift between Trump and what has been his staunchest ally. Of course, Trump feels that Pence has betrayed him. All Pence did was follow the law. Trump wanted him to use essentially magical powers to, flip the election. Pence said he couldn't do that. And yeah, it's not clear right now how much governing is going on, but it's also not clear what the best path forwards will be.
Well, was it Leslie Stahl who asked Nancy Pelosi last night on 60 Minutes who's running the government right now? I mean, we've got, I don't know if anybody forgot, but we're in the middle of a health pandemic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was that kind of a thing. Like, who's taking care of really important issues right now?
Right, and Pence is the head of the coronavirus task force.
Right.
So he's got, I believe today on his schedule, a call on that. So he's, trying to keep, I stand to be corrected on that, but he's trying to, keep the wheels rolling. Of course, in the background, Biden has been increasing his warnings that the pandemic is going to get worse before he gets better. Jennifer Jacobs, our colleague, is with him today. He got his second shot of the vaccine today and is warning, look, we got to wear a mask, we have to socially distance, and acknowledging concern about the pace of vaccinations. Biden promised 100 million shots in the first 100 days of his administration. That's actually a much slower pace than Donald Trump had been pledging, or the Trump administration officials have been pledging.
But maybe
it's a signal that they think that they're being set up to fail, and now it looks like even the 100 million might be a tall order.
Josh, you have me wondering about who's left close to the president right now. We had at least 2 cabinet secretaries step down last week. The vice president here on the outs in 30 seconds. Who are the president's allies right now?
His family, as always, including Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, senior aide. He's talking with Kushner. He's talking with Ivanka. Mark Meadows, his chief of staff. Dan Scavino, social media / senior aide to him. It's really that it's the same allies, but the circle has just closed. The second and third tiers have gone away. It's a smaller and smaller list of people that have the president's ear right now, and it's making it difficult to figure out, what, if anything, he's going to do.
Josh, really quickly, 20 seconds. So what are we going to see? Are we going to see executive orders? What might still come? Pardons? What's still to come, maybe, just quickly?
We think pardons, although how many and whether Trump himself, definitely, I would expect at least some pardons, executive orders potentially, and I do think he'll lean into the fight with tech, with big tech, one way or another.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Josh Wingrove, thank you so much. He is White House correspondent, Bloomberg News, on the phone from D.C. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Chart of the day coming up next. This is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master along with Tim Stenovic. Coming up, we're going to check in with Dave Wilson. Chart of the day.
I'm also excited about the stock of the day. It's a fun one today.
I know.
That's a deep tease.
You were like, I saw you responding this morning as soon as Dave sent it out. I'm like, whoa.
I'll give you a hint. Can I give a hint?
Yes,
Am I going to give everything away? Okay, shoes, footwear.
Mostly worn by kids and docs, I feel like.
Yeah, probably.
Rhymes with, okay. Let's get to your top business stories. Hey, Charlie Pellet.
Oh, hello there. We've got 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all declining, stocks lower for the first time in 5 sessions. Investors beginning the new trading week in a cautious mood. Right now, the S&P being led lower by real estate and communication services sectors. S&P down 26, a drop now of 0.7%. The Dow down 85, drop there of 0.3%. NASDAQ down 176, a drop of 1.3%. 10-year down 5/30 seconds, 10-year yield 1.13%. Gold is down 0.2%, 18.45 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.3%, 52.07 a barrel. Got to mention Bitcoin today, looking at Bitcoin down by 21%. Pfizer and BioNTech have raised their COVID-19 vaccine production target for this year to 2 billion shots as the partners respond to a global rush of countries seeking to order more doses. Pfizer shares right now up 1.6%. BioNTech surging today by 7%. AstraZeneca down 0.6%. Moderna higher by 3.4%. Well, as for the process of actually getting inoculations into the arms of Americans, lots of questions about the slow pace of the rollout. Dr. Joshua Sharfstein is Vice Dean at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Television and Radio.
I could imagine, though, that this will get better, that as these pieces fall into place, that we'll be able to set up vaccine centers, the pharmacies will do more. There'll be kind of a template for mobile operations, and teams can form and get vaccine. It's just a big challenge to get it set up.
And the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Again, recapping, equities lower with the S&P down 28, a drop there of 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. Bring on the song of the day. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move on up.
Yeah, move on up.
I'm really feeling bad that I don't know.
Can we?
I could cheat.
Is this
Curtis
Mayfield version?
Nice job. Is it, Dave?
It is.
Wow. You didn't even cheat, did you?
No, I did.
Well, oh, he did.
Yeah, I want to be honest, you know.
I appreciate honesty.
But it was easy because of the chorus.
Yeah.
Yeah, like right in the beginning. So thanks, Dave, for that.
Thank you, Dave. We like it easy on a Monday. So how does
Thanks
this?
to Paul Brennan, our producer, for picking out the
Did
right
he?
section because the original studio version is like 9 minutes long, so we had a lot of choices.
Yeah, we'd be sitting here for a while.
That's the thing that the DJs kids used to put on when they had to do a bathroom break, right? Because it was 9 minutes and they like had time to run.
Something like that.
Something like that. That analysis restaurant. Dave Wilson. So chart of the day. What do you got for us?
Well, it's all about some stocks that are moving on up, specifically raw material producers, you know, whether you're looking at steel or other metals or chemicals or whatever. I mean, these stocks have become, as the chart describes them, hot commodities lately. I mean, to the point where you had something happen last week that hadn't happened basically in more than 30 years. It was about the percentage of stocks in the S&P 500 Materials Index setting 52-week highs. And it's something that the folks over at Strategas Research Partners noted in a chart out Friday on Twitter, so got my attention. And sure enough, you look back to the middle of last week, you saw at one point there were 64% of the stocks in the index that had set 52-week highs, and that happened on Wednesday, and it's the highest since the index was first calculated back in 1989, and Thursday's number tied for the second highest, which was set last November, and in fact, the Wednesday figure was 7 percentage points higher. So it just goes to show you how much strength these shares are showing across the board, as Strategas said in their post. This move is broad.
Is that optimism on a recovery?
You'd have to
assume
take it that way, because let's face it, if you see steel prices going up and chemical prices going up and all the rest, I mean, certainly the producers stand to benefit from that.
Right.
And you'd figure that that's the sort of thing that happens when you get an economic expansion. So, it's a reasonable conclusion to draw here. We've seen it across a number of stocks. Usually when you think about it with commodities, you go right to the actual materials themselves, but you see a similar sort of reaction in the shares. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Okay, so Carol mentioned that this could signal a potential recovery.